Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first live for the second quartet of this series. Bree's not able to join tonight. Shay, we'll see. I think some things are going around. But we have Ashley and Kara, which I think you all should know them. If you don't, go check them out. They're amazing. And we are talking about Magic Steps by Tamora Pierce tonight. So, yeah, I think this should be fun. It's exciting. So, how'd it go, everyone? I just finished it this morning.
Yeah, I just finished it as well, so it's very fresh.
Okay, good.
I finished it 10 minutes ago, so it is
Perfect.
very fresh in my head.
I love it. Let's see. Hey, Jessica and Nora. Hi, Renee. Hello, Cool Gamer. How's everyone doing? So thoughts on this? This is really different, right? It's like several years in the future.
Yeah, and we don't have any of the rest of the gang. It's not mixed point of view, which I think can be a hard transition, but I still really enjoyed it. Like, of course, I miss the rest of them, like Sandry does, but I love her as a main character. Like, I love all of them so much that like I don't mind following them by themselves. Pasco got to me a little bit, but I'm like, okay, he's 12. Like it's understandable even if it's frustrating. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I like that we got to see more of Sandry and her uncle. That was really cool. I liked getting to see Sandry as like the main problem solver, and she's kind of like, I'm not an adult yet, and they're like, well, you're the best we have. So
Close enough.
Yeah. She's like more of an adult than like Pasco and the other kids, so they're like, you're gonna have to step up. And I just thought the magic was very cool. Like, of course, I love all the textile stuff again, and I also thought the dance magic was super interesting. So I had a great time with this one. Yeah.
I actually liked it only being like I liked it not being multi POV. It's not that I struggled with it with the first quartet, but I think I felt like I got to know Sandry better without the rest of the gang because it was so heavily focused on just her and how she was still processing things that had happened in the first quartet and dealing with, you know, having to grow up fast. Like I got her like, no, I'm not teaching this kid. Like you've got me all types of, there's no way I'm not fit to be a teacher. But then just like going back to like you've had to grow up faster than the average kid. But Pascal reminded me of Briar though.
Yeah.
Me too.
Me too.
And so I kind of loved him.
Yeah. I kind of did too.
He reminded me so much of Briar, and I was like, I actually am digging this. He's frustrating.
Yeah.
But I had this kind of like, but he's kind of adorable type of feelings that I had for Briar.
I like the only thing that I found like truly really frustrating was like right at the end where I'm like, you could have gotten so many people killed. Like, and I understand because unlike in the previous quartet, I don't think Sandry, which is understandable, she's only 14, but I don't think she realizes yet that like you can't just tell Pasco like not to do something. You have to like tell him why or he will just do it anyway.
Exactly.
So like I understand why it happened, but that was like very stressful. I'm like, I swear to God, if these murderers get away because Pasco ate the cake, like I just typical.
I'm like not the cake hanging in the middle of the air. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny because it makes me think, I feel like that was intentional though, because I think she's learning how to be a good teacher. And like we saw the adults in their lives explain to them why they shouldn't do stuff. And now she's having to learn why you got to do that. You know?
Yeah.
yeah, I liked Pasco too. He reminded me a lot of Briar. Yes, this is exactly it, Jessica. Briar, if Briar had grown up in a family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Without all the added trauma that Briar experienced. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I like that when Sandry says, like, he just seems so young, like, so immature. And then Lark has to be like, well, not everybody has the trauma that you kids did. And Sandry's like, yeah, that's true. Like,
It's like
because she
fair
shouldn't have
point.
had to be, that mature that fast. And so I think it's very understandable that she would look at, like, actual kids acting like kids and be kind of confused about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see what we got. Wanted to throw out a Pasco. Fair enough. Finished it this afternoon. Oh, that's right, Renee. You read the first book because Renee got this one instead of Sandry's book when we were first supposed to start the read along.
So you're ahead
So
of the class,
you're way
Renee.
ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It was nice to reread this. Haven't read it in years and years. Had pretty much forgotten all of it, so it was like reading it for the first time again. Yeah, yay! I love that. Yeah, I haven't read it in a while, and some of it came back to me as I was reading it. But I didn't remember all of the details. I guess one thing that is interesting is I was struck by how this really does feel, in terms of content, aged up, because even though they dealt with danger and, traumatic things in the first quartet, it wasn't like, children dying or
Right.
having to
Yeah.
kill somebody. This
Right.
was much more intense,
Yeah. I
It
was
definitely
thinking that
was.
too. Hmm.
Especially that piece at the end where she was, specifically talking about how she'd spent time she locked herself up because of the fact that it was just kind of like, I have blood on my hands now. I can't imagine thinking about that at 14, thinking like I've had to kill people. But I'm glad that it was Lark who pointed it out to her, right? That said, like, as long as you keep that kind of like that feeling of I feel
have
bad
blood
for
on-
doing it,
right.
you won't become like them. And so, but it definitely felt older and darker, even though that they dealt with all the trauma that they had dealt with in the first quartet.
Mhm.
This one definitely felt a tad bit darker than
Yeah.
what we got in the first quartet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even with like, oh my gosh, when we had that reveal that the mage that they had been using was a kid, that he was like another 12-year-old kid, like, because I was
Yeah,
assuming he was an adult too.
I
I
was
I was
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I like that was really, very like visceral, and the fact that like there was nothing they could do for him. Like, this had been happening for so long that like really the best that they could do is like just to put him out of his misery, which
Yeah,
is horrible. So yeah, I definitely feel like this one, like, Sandry's kind of like seeing that they're, even though her and the rest of them are very good at what they do, there are still some things that they can't do, like that they can't like fix. And I love that like the end of the book is Sandry realizing like we were lucky and it's time that we spread that to other people. Like, I love that. I love that that is, I guess, the direction this series is going, is like they were like fortunate enough to be found by people who care about them, and they're like, well, it
Mhm.
shouldn't take luck. Everybody, like, all the kids should get this. Like, it just makes me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, the violence was a little vivid. I don't know exactly. I will say, like, the first quartet, I'm currently reading the first book aloud to my 6 and 9-year-old, and I feel like that's fine. I would not read this aloud to my 6-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I guess, I don't know, 10, maybe?
Yeah.
I would
Like,
definitely say 10.
10.
I
Yeah.
would say 10. I would say 10 and up.
Yeah.
And then even then, you have to check each
Depending on the
child's
kid, depending
yeah,
on the
Right.
child, but
depending
yeah.
upon the kid. But I mean, content wise, I would say 10 and up.
Yeah.
Especially the I think the kind of like the addiction aspect of it is
Yeah.
what I guess like you, Kara, like think I mean, it was still bad. As an adult, I'm thinking like, goodness gracious, like they've got this guy pretty like strung out.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was revealed that it was a kid, I was like,
Yeah.
and I think too, because so much of what she's seen and experienced finds its way into her books. I'm like, I wonder how many times she's experienced a kid
Mm-hmm.
battling an addiction because adults have got them hooked on it.
Yeah.
As a parent, I just
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine doing that to a kid.
But I do feel like, kids are, I think sometimes we underestimate how much kids are aware of the world around them and are already
Mm-hmm.
experiencing things. So like I would be comfortable with in a year, probably my older child reading this. I think he would be okay to do that. But I think it depends on the kids.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. Kids will certainly teach you how to be an adult. Sure.
I kind of can't wait for in Briar's book. I'm sure he's gonna be like, "This kid is so annoying," and Rose Thorn is gonna be like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Does he remind you of anyone?
Seem familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot he was a kid too and it's I've read this before, so well,
Yeah.
um
I will also never get tired of Sandry going up to like guards or something and being like, "Hey, you need to let me in," and they're like, "Okay, little girl," and then they find out who she is, and they're like, "Wait, you're one of those like four freaky kids from Winding Circle? Like, okay, go ahead, like,
go in. We don't want to deal
stay
with all
away
your
from us."
magic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Um I thought it was interesting, like the way weaving was used in this
Mm-hmm.
to
Hmm.
deal with that was I thought was kind of a cool thing with the unmagic and the fact that like
Yeah,
most people can't just weave magic that way. That's a unique ability.
yeah. And I feel like Tamora Pierce did a really good job of justifying why it had to be Sandry doing this because yeah, it's like Lark is amazingly talented, but she literally can't do
Right.
what Sandry can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so impressive that like Tamora Pierce, like her books, when I hear people talk about them, I don't usually hear about like magic systems, like these really complex, like all these rules and things like that, which I can also enjoy those. But I feel like people usually don't like describe it that way. And I think it's very impressive that she can be so creative and interesting with like a concept that we see a lot, which is kind of like elemental magic, sort of. I just think that's very cool. Like that she's not, and even with like Triss, where like the weather magic, I feel like is something that we see is a little more common. Like the way that she'll make connections and she'll think about like, okay, well, if she tries to do this, but there's a storm coming, how would that like affect it? Like I just feel like she's very creative with stuff like that. Like usually
Hmm.
I end up talking about like, oh, I love the characters, I love like the relationships in the story and the themes, but I'm like, it's also very cool that she can be so creative and like I don't know,
Hmm.
it's almost like she's not making a big deal out of it. It's like
Hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, well, the other thing that I think she does really well that's important is that the way her magic system is set up, there are costs to magic.
Hmm.
Like you
Yeah.
don't have anybody who's just all powerful with no cost. Like your magic improves with training and with meditation. If you use too much magic, there are consequences, whether it's just that you get exhausted and burnt out or that you can like literally kill yourself because
Yeah.
you put too much into it. Like I think that's what makes it feel more real is that it's not just like she doesn't use magic as a quick fix to the plot. It's something that's more realistic kind of woven into the
Yeah.
story.
It's like the magical problem solving, I think, is one of my favorite things about these books. Like, it's just,
Hmm.
I find it fascinating, like, the way that we see, based on the different characters' abilities, the way that they can kind of, like, especially for these four main characters, because we know that their abilities go beyond what most mages even expect them to have.
Hmm.
And so I just love seeing, like, the way that they can creatively, like, put stuff together. Like Sandry coming up with like, okay, well if I can weave a net, then Pasco can do his like net dance with that, and just like combining those things I think is I don't know, it's just very intriguing to me and I like it.
I like that too with the consequence of magic, also like the consequence of not taking the time to learn your magic and educate yourself. And being, because that was a huge thing with Pasco. Like, it's like,
Mhm.
sir, how many people have to tell you that you have magic abilities? And then it takes you literally not listening and your two cousins hanging in
Like
midair.
hanging in midair.
When
Like,
you're
oh
panicking,
no.
I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Like, teach me, teach me, teach me. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I love you, my friend, but you have already been told time and time again that you were supposed to get
Yeah.
lessons. And so even that whole idea of like, I think he's just that character. He has to learn the hard way. And maybe
Yes.
that's why I connect to him, because I also have to learn the hard way. And so it's just kind of like, I'm not buying into any of this, but I love this whole like, you have to know yourself so that people do not use you. And I think that in
Yes.
general is an important life lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like Pasco does have to like learn from experience, but once he does, like it seems like he gets it now. I really love that when Sandry is like summoned to help get his cousins down, she knows immediately. She's like, I can't calm him down too quick, or he's like never gonna take lessons. So
She's like,
she
he
like
really needs to feel
she like
what he did.
lets him freak out for like a little extra time before she's like, let's work through this. I'm like, that's really smart. I think you're already catching on to what kind of kid this is.
Yeah. Well, I also thought it was interesting because he's part of this family that are sort of like, I guess, fantasy police, sort of. And like he feels like that's what he has to do.
Yeah.
Um, and I like how Sandra even stood up to his uncle, who was like, well, he should be going and learning how to turn this magic into something useful for what our family does. And she's like, excuse you.
If you don't have magic, close your mouth. Because
I don't know what you're
that
talking about.
clapback was the epic clapback, because it's like, unless basically you have magic, keep your mouth closed on the subject. I was
She's like,
like, yes, yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like he's this like grown ass man, and she's like, close your mouth, sir. No opinion.
Hush.
Like,
Yeah.
You don't have any skin in this game, so I need you to mind the business that pays you, and this
yeah.
is not paying you, so mind it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I find it like especially satisfying because it's Sandry and she is so like unlike the rest of them, she's grown up having to like mind her manners a lot more, and so when she
Mhm.
doesn't, I love it. Like especially when she can do it like so not politely exactly, but um I mean she left that man for dead. Like she just like destroyed him, but it was just like very quietly and I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's kind of like there are definitely kids like that who grow up in families where there's like the family business and they're the oddball
Mhm.
creative kid who
Mhm.
wants to be and do
Mhm.
something else. And so I feel like this could really speak to, you know, a lot of kids in situations like that where they're like, yeah, but the thing that I love is not what my parents expect from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I also really love at the end when Sandry goes to visit Lark again, and I really love that we end it with Sandry realizing like, okay, other kids need them too, and that's okay, and
Yeah.
I can still be at home here and come back when I need it, and
Yeah.
also open it up to other people. I was like, what a mature 14-year-old you are. I love
Yeah.
Sandry.
Yeah. I like that too.
And I like too that that kind of speaks to like you're never too old to ask for help from people or to like need that kind of emotional support.
Yeah.
Like obviously Sandry is still very young, but I love that Lark is like, "Oh, we're always going to be here for you." I'm like, I just
Yeah.
love you guys.
Well, but also that they're not holding on tightly to them. They want them to
Mhm.
grow and mature and like add to the world. They're giving them
Yeah.
more and more
Mhm.
responsibility, and I think that that's great as well,
Yeah.
recognizing that they're growing up.
Yeah. And that it's them who are choosing it. Like Sandry she realizes that Lark had kind of been thinking this would happen, but Sandry's the one who comes to the realization like, oh, like I would be unhappy if I had to move like back here, or if I had to like leave my uncle by himself. Like I like that it was a decision that she made, even if it was something that Lark saw coming. You know, it wasn't like, all
Mhm.
right, you kids are on your own. Like,
Can we talk about Duke Vedris and his love interest?
Oh,
I
listen.
I love that Sandry is like immediately she's like, oh,
Mhm.
like,
I
like
wonder if
the
this could be a
first time.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly it could.
I thought that was so funny. And when the like inspector guy he comes in, he's like, "Oh, Sandra, I need to talk to you." And she's like, "Great!" And she just like sprints out of the room with him.
Have a nice lunch.
Very smooth.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that all worked out too, because I know she was so, so concerned after him having that heart attack, just constantly
Yeah.
being concerned. And I think even, she gets to the point where she's like, I can't coddle him. I can't continue to do this. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, good. Now I know that there's somebody here to take care of you and occupy your time. Like,
Well, you as the child don't have to be the one
yeah,
entirely responsible for the adults in your life,
yeah,
because that's a lot
Yeah.
of pressure too.
Yes. And especially because being a kid who is trying to take care of an adult, it's like even when they love you, it's very hard to get them to listen, you know? Like,
yeah.
um yeah, I thought that was really well done. I was not expecting the inspector guy to die. Wolfric
Oh, that
Snaptrap.
I
was, oh,
know.
I
I
really
wasn't
didn't think he
either.
would. I
I
didn't
didn't think
think
he
he
was gonna
would.
die either, but
Yeah.
when that line dropped and
Mm,
it was like I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I know like he had that, kind of rough around the edges type of personality that I was
Mhm.
enjoying.
Yeah.
mhm.
And so I felt for Sandry because I was like, that is there was a guilt there for not being able to move fast enough to save him.
Yes. Like Sandry has seen way too much. Like
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
like even before the previous series, like I mean her origin story is like almost suffocating alone after
Hmm.
seeing the dead bodies of everyone she loves. Like I just give this girl a break. Like um yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is it's like you don't know what to expect from Tamara Pierce's books. It's
Mhm.
like she'll go places that you might not think. Because yeah, I had forgotten too that he
Yeah.
died and wasn't expecting it. Because he's not a throwaway character.
He's
Right.
not.
He feels like that character where it's like he's important enough that he's like in a decent number of scenes, but he's not like so important that you think, oh, he's gonna be like the big like loss, if something happens. So yeah, I know. I thought he was safe.
Yeah.
Um, I do feel like of the Tamora Pierce books that I've read so far, though, I'm very impressed that like even when it is a death, like a character death or something like that that shocks me, it doesn't feel like it's for shock value, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel like she does it like cheaply. It always feels like, okay, I see why this happened. I'm not happy about it, but I get why. Um
Yeah.
Also, I love his name, like Wolfric Snaptrap. It sounds like if Charles Dickens wrote a fantasy novel. Like he would name his main character Wolfric Snaptrap. Like I just think that's really funny.
That's funny. I can definitely see that. Yeah. I feel like I don't know, it was interesting. I guess I had forgotten like how much more violent this one does get. And it is disturbing. Like the villains are truly
Yeah,
disturbing. And I
yeah,
think too because they're like the more that they're in touch with the unmagic, the more they're sort of losing their humanity. And we
yeah,
see that too because we do get something scenes in their perspectives.
yeah.
And so we see some of the breakdown in what used to drive them and what does now and like morality they may have had before versus now.
And even the scene where Sandria is having to like weave that net all by herself, like even that was like we get that sense of like the unmagic is like almost sentient in a way. It's very creepy.
It is.
Um and I love that one of the things that pulls her through it is picturing Briar being like, "That's that goo making you think that," and she's like, you're right." Um, and just and like having like the lamps that Daja and Triss made, and like having the
Hmm.
herbs from Rosethorn and Briar. Like I love that she like drew strength from them even when they weren't there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but that was another part that I I don't think I was expecting. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to go as far as it did. Like when they killed the baby and they like told us about, like, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what we're doing here." Like I was
Yeah.
really shocked by that part.
I
And
was
I mean,
too.
Sandry was too, all of them were, but when she kills the woman just cuz she's like, "Well, I can't take the chance that she's pregnant." Like, yeah. So I mean, it was very effective, but awful.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Ashley, thoughts
Mhm.
on the unmagic, the creepy villains?
I I wasn't expecting it to be as dark as it was. I think that's probably what threw me for a loop. But I think I like the idea of the unmagic adding a level of complexity to the magic system overall. I
Hmm.
found
Mhm.
that to be really, really interesting. And honestly, there was a moment in time where I was kind of confused about how that would work with interacting with their magic, like how that would, like how that whole thing would happen. But um I don't know. I just was not expecting it to be as graphic as it was, and not
Mhm.
necessarily like in a bad way, but
Yeah.
it just threw me off because the scenes for me were just so vivid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think whatever her name is, I forget her name, um, the lack of emotion when
Mhm.
you're so used to these narratives
Yeah.
and characters who are just very either they're learning how to be aware of themselves and other people's feelings, or they're already at that point where they're very conscious of themselves and their actions and how that makes other people feel. So to switch into kind of a narrative where we were actually in her perspective
Hmm.
and it was just this lack or void of emotion, it made me feel some type of way. But I think that this whole idea of like this nothingness is
Mhm.
it worked very well. If I'm making any type of sense, like the fact
Yeah.
that there was like this
Yeah.
absence, it also correlated to the fact that there is this absence of emotion
Yeah.
at play as well.
Well, which I think she mentions, right? She talks about how,
Mhm.
like, oh, I had been worried about having to kill the children, but when it came down to it, I didn't feel anything. It's
And
like
Yeah.
stuff like that, like
that's
where you can
it.
see how
Yeah.
Yeah.
she has like progressed with
Hmm.
being, exposed to it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
even
do think though, because like if she knew that Sandry was going to have to kill them at the end, it is also really effective at showing how far gone they are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
like this isn't doesn't feel like a redeemable situation or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
where you can save them.
Which is
Yeah.
it help sorry, Kara.
Oh, no, I was gonna say too, like, I think it's in that same part where she's thinking about, like, yeah, I didn't even think about killing the children. It was fine. Like, there's like a part in that same section where she thinks something um, like 'cause she's like, in some way, she is able to notice that she's not feeling anything anymore. And so she kind of has this thought of like, well, what's the point of this if I can't even enjoy it? And like, that was like also horrifying. Like, yeah, I think the like nothingness and just like the absence of like anything
Yeah.
um
Hmm.
was very effective here. Um and I was like, it must have been so hard for Sandry to make that decision, but like I'm really proud that she did, because she thinks, she's
Yeah.
like, how many other people are they going to keep killing? Like, are they going to
Yeah.
keep doing this too? Um I mean, kind of like what we were saying with like the Graceling read along is like, I feel like
Mm,
Tamora Pierce also writes books where like characters realize both of these options are going to make me feel horrible, but one of them is going to lead to fewer people getting hurt. And so sometimes you have to do that even though it doesn't feel good, you know, it doesn't feel right. So, yeah.
It must have been hard though too, because like her original plan had been to just like trap them so they could put them on trial, but because of
eating that freaking cake that could not wait like another 20 minutes. I can't.
He just had to see what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, which I get it. It's like, it's hard when you're a curious kid and you want to know what's going on.
I had to keep reminding myself, I'm like, he's 12 years old. He's 12 years old. Like, it's... even though Sandry's like, I was never that stupid when I was 12. Yeah. And even with, like, the sort of main plot of this book being, like, stopping murderers, something else that I guess I didn't really expect is I think I must have been assuming that after that first murder, not that they would catch them right away, but like that they would be able to stop before they killed other people.
Yeah. I just clicked over because I realized I haven't been getting any, like, seeing any comments.
And that is so weird.
But sorry everyone, I now see them on the YouTube page, but for whatever reason, they're not.
Yeah, it did that to me too.
Okay, well that makes sense then, because I was like, why?
I was like, why is nobody talking to us?
One. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, nobody has any comments.
I know, I thought so. Okay, I'm just gonna like read them because StreamYard is not showing anything. Okay, sorry. I was like, why is nobody talking? This is so weird.
That's weird. Yeah.
Jen says, yeah, I was so shocked when the mage was a child. Yep. Jessica says, I love understanding more about the craft now. I can totally picture a drop spindle because I know how the craft works now, so it was way more vivid in my mind. I love that. Yeah, you do learn a lot, I feel like, about things here. Jen says, I loved the discipline that Pasco got from his dance teacher. She was really strict, but also caring with him.
Yes.
Agreed. Then Pasco's family needs a hobby. Harrier work shouldn't be their only identity.
I agree.
Yeah. True story. Let's see. And let's see. Then he I don't know what some of this is relating to because at that point you could tell the assassins had really become tainted by the unmagic. Yes. Jessica says the unmagic reminds me of the black stuff from Marvel. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. encountered it. I can't think of the name of the stuff. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called either, though. Hydra messed with it. Yes. Yeah, I can see that. Jessica says, y'all know I always have opinions. True story. Okay, well, I'll just keep like popping over to look at the chat on YouTube occasionally.
Yeah, that is super weird.
Yeah, I was like, man, there's been like no comments for so long, so that explains it. StreamYard is glitching on me, I guess.
Yeah.
Man. Whew, I don't know what else about this. I feel like
I think I was also maybe expecting them to catch the bad guys before a bunch more people died. And like it makes sense that they couldn't because like they have never been up against this before. But I think that was another part of just being like unsure what to expect with how like dark or how violent things were going to get because yeah, like I was surprised that we even got another like couple murders, much less that they were, you know, as bad as they were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's a whole large family. I do think it's interesting though too. I think you really see the Duke's character in that he is going to such lengths to protect this family that he doesn't even really like and just sort of like puts up with having as long as they follow his rules in the city. But he's like, these are, they're in my city. These are my people. I'm gonna do what
He's
I
like,
can to protect them.
yeah, he's like, it doesn't matter how much I dislike you. I'm not gonna let somebody like murder you in my home.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was really
Exactly.
interesting too.
Yep. Yeah.
I think I am
think.
excited to see, because everybody's stories are so independent, even though we do get the reference to them communicating at the end. I'm very interested to see what everybody else has been doing,
Yeah.
like while this was happening to poor old Sandry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, like,
Briar is
man,
next.
my baby,
your boy.
my baby.
Yeah. Well, and if I remember right, I think all the books bring in new characters because I feel like they need someone new to interact with. So I feel like I think all the books have something like that.
I'm just imagining Briar as a teacher. Oh my god. It would be really funny. I haven't even looked at like the summary for the second book, but it would be hilarious to me if like his apprentice ends up being like a total rule follower and he has to be like, "No, you should don't just listen when I tell you not to do something. You're supposed to follow me anyway."
Right. Oh my gosh. Karen asks, do you think you'll read Will of the Empress after this quartet? I don't know. So far, we have committed to the second quartet, and we'll let you know.
Is the Will of the Empress, does that follow this quartet?
Yeah, so I think The Will of the Empress is a longer novel that is like the four of them being reunited after, like, involves the four of them being reunited.
Okay.
And then I think there's also a duology set in this world involving some of their students or something, although I've heard more mixed things about those. I think I read one of them at some point. I don't really these are not ones I know as much about because I maybe read Will of the Empress once, but I haven't. It's not something I've like returned to. So I mean, we'll see. We'll let you know. Somebody said, "Oh, Jessica says we have Empress and Melting Stones left." So okay, so there's two books. Okay, so there's like two longer novels that are in this world, I guess.
What about Battle Magic?
So that's part of the quartet, right?
It's saying, I just looked on Goodreads and it said that with the Will of the Empress is part of the Circle Reforged.
Huh.
And it has Melting Stones as a second book and then Battle Magic as a third book. I don't know anything about anything. I'm just looking. I
Oh
know
yeah,
nothing about
somebody
anything.
is saying Battle Magic. There are three after Battle Magic comes before those ones in the timeline, but oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that is very interesting. I'm seeing now
But
where
it
someone says that they would have preferred to read Battle Magic before reading the Will of
huh.
the Empress. Okay.
Interesting.
Learn something new every day.
So it's like a prequel?
Yeah, prequel that was published. Goodness gracious, so long after the first two? Am I
Yeah.
saying that right?
I'm realizing I had
2013.
no idea Tamora Pierce had written this many books. Like I am a Tamora Pierce newbie, so this is very exciting for me.
She has written a lot of books. This is just like because there's also multiple series set in her other world.
Right, which I have read more of those. Like I've read the whole the Animal Magic series that I can never remember the name of, but I really liked
Yeah.
that one. And then I'm still in the middle of the Protector of the Small books. Um, so I feel like generally when people talk about her books, they mean like the Tortle ones.
Hmm.
So it's been very exciting to read these.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I love these. I think they're really underappreciated.
Mhm.
But yeah, it would be interesting to read. We'll see, maybe. I mean, these ones are longer.
Yeah,
So
I'm
like that's
seeing
the only thing is like whereas
550 pages.
yeah.
We could have like a break of a certain amount of time and then like a reunion read along, maybe.
Right. Like maybe sometime next year.
Right,
Like
right.
if we're feeling ambitious. I don't know. Yeah, it's not something I want to like jump right into because it's
Right.
like these ones are more of a commitment. Whereas like these are like really quick to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, those ones are long. I mean, it would be interesting to finish at some point, but we'll see. No promises. We make no
TBD.
yeah. Let's see. Yeah, she was prolific. People are saying she has 29 books, and Jen owns every one of them. Jessica says Tordal is my favorite world, but I love Emelon too. We might as well finish it out.
Wow.
I mean, that's a big jump. I mean, like that's basically, it's like two of these from
Yeah.
one book. That's
Mhm.
not. It's not a. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe eventually.
Jessica trying to talk you into it live on camera.
I know exactly.
Commit.
Like, come on, commit to it. Let's do it. No,
It's only a
I
couple
think
more books.
we weren't even gonna do the second quartet.
I know.
We weren't.
It's like people are just never satisfied.
I know. I'm glad we are doing the second one.
I am
though.
too. Yeah, me too. It'll be fun. And we'll finish in November, so I think that'll be good.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. If we do anything, it won't be till next year. So,
Because it would
don't
take
hold
me
your
some
breath.
time to read that anyway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Jessica, I always try to talk Bethany into stuff. Renee, I was like, I'm already halfway through.
Oh God.
Renee, what?
Next year is coming. I know, but I don't mean like first thing. Oh my god. I don't know. I haven't started
Everybody
planning for
calm down. Like
that. Like we still have more of this year to go, y'all. It's not even fall yet.
yeah. I know. I would like it
I
to be
haven't
fall now,
planned.
please.
I know. Like I have not started really planning for next year yet. So
Like we're still at that point of the year where I'm like 2024 doesn't sound like a real thing. I don't think numbers go that high. Like sounds like a fake date.
I mean, like the only thing I'm really planning for next year is like we're doing a big vacation in February, but that's
That's the only thing we're planning to is a big vacation next year. That's it. I have not thought about next year at all. I'm still trying to make it through this year.
yeah. I'm just like waiting for school to start up again.
That's right. Y'all still haven't started school.
No, we start September 7th.
Some of our kids have been in school for 3 weeks already.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, no. We're like last week was camps are now over and now we have like a week and a half of no camps before school starts. We've got to have doctor's appointments and it's going to be probably a lot of sibling squabbles.
What grades are they going into this year, Bethany?
2nd and 4th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dang, you got a baby so close to middle school already.
I know.
Oh.
I know.
And I'm over here stressed out about preschool.
Listen, it goes fast. You know what's funny? So because like we live in the city, and here middle school kids, like there's no buses to middle school. Like you walk with friends or you like take the subway or something, and like a lot of middle schoolers go in groups with their friends to like, and parents don't. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So because of that, the elementary school has this thing where with like parent permission in 5th grade, the kids can go out in the neighborhood to lunch with they have to be in groups of at least 2, and there's like a very limited like 2-block radius of where they can go with the like little restaurants or whatever. but like they let them do that in 5th grade. And I remember when because we've been there since pre-K. I remember when we started there and they talked about it. I was horrified. I was like,
Yeah.
never. Oh my God. And now my kid is going into 4th grade and I'm like, yeah, in a year, I'd be fine with that. It's funny how much they grow and it changes.
Yeah.
So there's they do a lot of growing up. So
Very quickly.
anyway, that's funny. Oh man, the chat is going. What does this say? 30 new book with her editor right now, according to her Patreon. Okay, they're Tempest and Slaughter book 2 finally. Man, that came out a long time ago. Jessica, we have to get in early, Bethany, because we know you plan months and months in advance.
You have to submit your application to be considered.
It's true, though. She's not wrong. Oh my gosh. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, like figuring out like with kids, like at what age to give them, because you want them to like, well, it's like with the series, like you want them to grow up and be independent and like slowly get more responsibility, and you have to like figure out how to do that safely in, ways that make sense for their age. So
yeah. Well, also like making sure they know that they can still come to people for help, like if they need it.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, but also just knowing like basic safety.
Yes.
And like how to handle yourself, because like especially living in the middle of a big city, it's also like, I'm as I'm walking through the city, like having conversations with my kid about like how to handle yourself in different situations and how to like keep yourself safe and avoid things that seem weird, and like don't like mind your own business sometimes.
Right.
Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, like if somebody's doing something weird, because this is, like this is a common thing. Like if somebody is doing something weird and nobody is getting hurt, just ignore it and walk on the other side of the street. If somebody is getting hurt, get a grown up.
Yes.
Like don't get involved.
Yeah. Which these kids are terrible at doing. They are terrible at not getting involved.
Yeah, they really are. Well, and that's the thing is like I have kids like that too who would want to get involved in things. I have to be like, listen, like you need to know how to like.
Are you saying that they would be invisibly eating the cake slice?
100%. Oh, yes. That would be exactly what they would be doing. I needed a snack. It was taking too long.
Yeah. It's like, do you understand about hiding? Like, you can't just...
Oh my gosh. Yep. Well, anything else about Magic Steps? Final thoughts?
It was great.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that like we don't really get details about this family vendetta, and I kind of like that. It's like, yeah, we don't really need to know. I mean, okay, we hear about like the like incident that started all of this payback, but like we don't really spend a lot of time learning about like the murderer's family, which I'm fine with. I'm like, I don't really need to know the backstory of why y'all think this is justified. Like, so I admire Tamora Pierce's writing ability to be like, this is unnecessary information. Like, I think like conciseness in fantasy can be underappreciated, so I just really admire her for that.
Especially for this age group, because their attention is not there for things. That's one of my biggest issues sometimes is with some of these middle grade fantasy books that are coming out now. I'm like, they're too long.
They are.
Like they like go on and on about stuff that I'm like, a child reading this does not care about
They've
the paragraphs.
already skipped to the next chapter.
Like these paragraphs of description, they don't care. Like you need to like move it along. I feel like there's quite a lot of authors doing that right now. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
notice it when I read stuff out loud to my kids. I'm like, geez, come on, get to the point.
You're like, I'm bored too. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed like I feel like contemporaries, like for various age ranges, have also gotten a lot longer. And there's like a couple authors where it's like, I love reading long books from you because I just love everything you do. But for whatever reason, it's like a contemporary, like that's the genre that I notice it in the most. And maybe that's because I don't pick them up as often as like fantasy, for example. But um, yeah, sometimes it's like, why is this contemporary romance 450 pages? It does not need to be. Like, please no. But
Like, edit people more,
yeah,
please.
yeah.
I feel like that's my complaint in a lot of books these days is I'm like, somebody needs to edit them more. Like, cut some of this out. There's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can
Yeah,
still have like, beautiful writing or like atmosphere or something. It's
for
like
sure.
you don't need like a 600-page book to
No.
do that. Like,
No. I mean, there are people who write novellas and do that effectively in like
yes.
150 pages. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. No, I like this. Let's see. Somebody said, I think the series really bridges the gap of middle grade to YA really well. Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. I mean, and I think from what I remember, Will of the Empress is more solidly YA. So I do think you're kind of going, like, you're kind of aging up through the three series.
And I really like to, and obviously I haven't read these before, so I don't really have like the later books to compare it to, but it feels like even though we are aging up the books with the characters, it's not like the first series she like watered down a lot to like make it, appropriate for kids or whatever. It's like we were all
Yeah.
just talking about how it deals with the same kinds of things. Like the amount of detail you get is different and kind of the, I don't know, specificness or descriptiveness can vary, but it's not like, I don't know. I love reading authors that like respect the kids they're writing for, Like I think that's something you can, I think, tell a lot of times. Um and it's very clear that like Tamora Pierce really respects her audience, which makes sense because she's been working with kids for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's like the difference between in the first quartet, them dealing with the fact that like growing, like, like Briar growing those big thorns killed pirates
Hmm.
versus like the more personal feel of what
Mhm.
Sandry has to do in this book. Like
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like she was kind of introducing some of those things, but she knows that in this series the kids reading it are older, and she's like, okay, we can go into it a little more.
Mhm.
right. Yeah. Let's see. Somebody said Becca Cooper series is solidly YA. Becca is the series with Alana and George's daughter is also grew with the readers too. Well, I mean, I think also, yeah, even the Alana series, same thing. Like she starts out pretty young, and by the end, she's like, 20 or something. So
I feel like it's harder to get series like that published now, and that makes me really sad because
yeah,
I think it's really impressive when book series can do that. And I think like the the demographic labels and everything, it's such an integral part of how publishing markets books that I think it can be really hard to like get, I don't know. Like I'm not in the publishing industry, but it certainly seems like those books aren't getting published as often, and I think that's sad.
it's like you get more things that take place over the course of a shorter period of time rather than really seeing people grow up over years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or it's like sometimes I'll even see reviews from people where they're like, "Oh, well, I don't think this book was done very well. I didn't know if this was young adult or like whatever because like the it has different like characteristics from I guess like multiple age ranges." And I'm like, "Well, that doesn't make it bad though. It's like it doesn't, I don't know. I think it doesn't always have to be so clearly sorted into one of those categories. Like
well,
I
I also
yeah.
think that like you take different things away from it when you read things at different ages. Because like the Alana books, I probably read them for the first time when I was 11 or 12,
Mhm.
and you know, at that point, like some of the stuff where she was older, it was more like, oh, this is really interesting to see somebody's life as an older person
Mhm.
because like that's a thing.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, like you know it, but it feels more like it's like you take different things from it at different
Yeah.
points in your life.
Yeah. Like I was just thinking how almost all of the people I know who like read Jane Austen have had a similar experience where it's like you don't love persuasion until you're around Anne's age usually.
Yeah,
Like there are exceptions, but like in general, like that's what happened with me and a lot of other people I know is like, you know, maybe the first time you're like, okay, you know, I enjoy this author, so this is a good time, and it's like it's one of my favorites now. And it didn't used to be. Like it took being older, like being an adult, to really appreciate what a like beautiful story it is and how satisfying it is. So like yeah, I think there is a
yeah,
lot of value in being able to come to a story at different ages.
yeah. Okay, well, you know what this always reminds me of is the movie. Have y'all seen The Sound of Music?
Yes.
Okay. My mom was really into musicals, like old musicals. So growing up, I watched them a lot. And so The Sound of Music, I grew up on it, and I remember being a kid and thinking like the most romantic thing in this movie was the relationship between like the 16-year-old daughter and her kind of sort of like boyfriend that she's not
Yeah.
supposed to have who ends up becoming a Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was like, their dance scene is the most romantic thing, and I always thought that like the adult romance was so boring,
Yeah.
and I was like bored. And so it's funny that I remember the first time I saw it in my 20s, and
Mhm.
it flipped, and I was like, this is so dumb. Like the thing that I thought was so romantic, and I was like, but this like romance between these two older adults is just so lovely. So it was
Yeah.
like, it's just funny how that
Yeah.
shows.
I have you seen The Kick and I? Um
Yes, not
okay,
recently, not
so
in recently though.
it's yeah, it's obviously there are issues with like the original like source material, but I
Yeah.
do enjoy things about it. And I got to see it live like several years ago, and it was like this massive like outdoor amphitheater style, like tons of people. And I think about this all the time because there's shall we dance sequence, you know, and it's like at first it's really playful and silly and fun, and then he says like they weren't holding hands like this, and he like puts his hands on her waist, and I am telling you, everyone in that theater gasped at the same second. And like that's so funny because it's like, you know, we all watch TV and movies where like way more physical intimacy happens, but like that's an example of like being at because I think especially because it was mostly adults at this one, it wasn't necessarily a lot of families with kids. We could all
Mhm.
appreciate what a big deal this was, like
Yeah.
how like romantic it is. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Changes over time. It's interesting. Oh, all right. Well, maybe we should wrap this up, and we will be back next month to talk about street magic with Briar. So that'll be fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Excited. This one is like slightly longer. It's like 300 pages. So, well, thanks for joining, guys, and
Yeah.
see everybody next time. Have a
Yes.
good night.